As you can tell from this week's sermon title, I needed a joke related to the subject of kissing, and the chief came through yet again. A little girl was watching her grandmother, who was standing in front of the mirror, getting ready for her monthly bridge club meeting. The woman had combed her hair, put on a little rouge, and then she bent down and gave her granddaughter a kiss goodbye. "Grandma," the little girl said, "you kissed me, but you forgot to kiss the toilet paper." Dick didn't think it was funny either. I told him he had to be a woman, but I guess that wasn't the case. Betrayed. The dictionary defines the word betrayal as to deliver or expose to an enemy by treachery, to violate a confidence, to deceive. But we don't need a book to tell us what that word means. Betrayal is the stuff of which nightmares are made. You think you can trust someone, and then you discover that you were wrong. Being betrayed by a stranger is bad enough. A nice man tells you that he will watch your luggage while you go to the restroom. And you come out only to discover him and your luggage gone. That's bad enough. But being betrayed by a friend or a loved one is much worse. And then to be betrayed with a kiss, what could be worse than that? Dante, in writing the Inferno, decided that nothing could be. In fact, he placed Judas on hell's bottom rung, which meant that Judas would be the first one eaten by Lucifer himself. That's bad. So who was this Judas? That's a hard question to answer because the history is complicated and his motives obscure. Pontius Pilate was an easy study in comparison. Last week's text read like Pilate's personal diary, and we were afforded a quick glimpse into his psyche. But in contrast to Pilate, Judas is opaque. Biblically speaking, he was a man of few words. Some people claim that he did what he did because he was the outsider. And he'd always been the odd man out. Judas came from Kerioth, a town which lies in the south of Judea. And this fact is significant in that he was the only one of the 12 disciples who was not a Galilean. If Judas had wanted to make it into the inner circle, he never did, because Peter, Andrew, James, and John already occupied those positions. And some would say that Judas was a frustrated wannabe because he never quite made the cut. Others would disagree. After all, the disciples made him their treasurer. They didn't pick Matthew, the tax collector, to handle their money. He could have. He had the skills, but they trusted Judas. So he was the designated one. And besides, and this is a very good question, had the disciples been suspicious of him, why, when Jesus announced, "One of you will betray me," why didn't the others know immediately whom he was talking about? In the Gospel of John, we read the words, "Some thought that because Judas had the common purse, Jesus was telling him, buy what we need for the festival, or that he should give something to the poor." It was not obvious to the others that Judas was evil gone awry. So what are we to make of Judas? Some people feel sorry for him. They think of him as a divine pawn, having no control over his actions and as being powerless, completely powerless to affect his own fate. He was given an assignment. Someone described him as the loser who, quote, got stuck drawing the short straw. And if helpless Judas had been assigned this dastardly role, then isn't pity the only appropriate response? Others are less sympathetic to Judas and argue that he had personal freedom all along. He had enough to try to force Jesus' hand. After all, for the past 3 years, he had witnessed Jesus performing all kinds of miracles. He watched him give blind Bartimaeus his sight. He witnessed a lame man take up his pallet and walk. He heard Jesus cry life into Lazarus as he lay in a tomb. And now in Judas' mind, instead of passively allowing him to accept defeat, he believed it was time for Judas to take charge, to be proactive, to fight for his life. And maybe Judas thought that his kiss that meant Jesus' arrest, was the one that would spur him on, because time was running out. In the words of Barbara Brown Taylor, Jesus was the Lord who went on giving himself away to the one who would give him away, because his faithfulness to God did not depend on anyone else. His death-defying love knew no end. And it is this Jesus who insists on loving us, on feeding us at his table, refusing to cast us off ever, regardless of what terrible thing we've done or what good and noble thing we can't bring ourselves to do. He loves us anyway. The accusations surrounding our actions are self-accusations. The punishments are self-inflicted. Because the one thing we can count on is unconditional love. Convincing ourselves that we are worthy of this love is the hard part. That's what eluded Judas. But unless we can, it's awfully hard to uproot self-hatred. And that, I think, is at the very core of evil. Sin is separation from God. And so that's why these Sundays in Lent are so precious. They challenge us to say, not, isn't it terrible that we sin? But instead, given the love, given the unfailing grace of Jesus Christ, we can say, isn't it wonderful that we don't have to? Thanks be to God. Amen.